I just wanted to jump on here and pose a question. It's not about health. It's not about drugs or anti-aging. Well, it can be about anti-aging. We have a problem in America with gun crime. People using guns to perpetrate crimes on other individuals, even kill them. Let me ask you a question. If you were tasked with reducing the rate of gun crime in America, but you could not do away with the Second Amendment, and you could not do away with personal ownership of handguns, and you had this one bit of information that, according to the ATF, who uses something called E-Trace. E-Trace is used by law enforcement agents. When they confiscate a gun at a crime, they put it into the E-Trace database of the ATF, and it comes up with the original owner of the gun, what gun store they bought it at, when they bought it, if it was ever sold or reported stolen after that. And every time a crime occurs in America, there were 300 major cities reviewed from 2017 to 2023. And if you learned that 70% of the handguns used by criminals to commit crimes were previously owned by law-abiding citizens, law enforcement officers, or private security personnel. So 70% of the handguns being used by criminals were not 3D printed. They're not ghost guns. They were legitimately owned guns by individuals, but somehow they lost track of them. Now, we know because of police reports and insurance reports that right around 300,000 handguns a year are reported stolen. 90% of them from automobiles, not from home burglaries. But if you knew this information, and you knew that every year law enforcement nationwide pulls between 1.7 and 1.9 million E-Traces. So that means there's criminal activity that prompts them to use the ATF database to see where this gun came from. 1.7 to 1.9 million times. And we know that around 300,000 of those handguns are stolen from vehicles, as I said. So the balance of those handguns are coming into the criminal hands. How? Well, I know the answer because I've spent 5 years digging in this dirt. And that is, these guns are simply left behind, or we can call them lost. Now remember, I said you can't do away with personal handgun ownership or the Second Amendment. So we can't just say, well, people shouldn't own guns. A large majority of those lost handguns belonged to police officers and private security guards who are armed. And if I told you the number one place that people leave and forget their guns is in a public restroom, what would you do to reduce gun crime? I'm asking for honest answers. I already know the answer because I've spent over $740,000 developing a device that will solve this problem. And the gun leash is to handguns what the safety belt is to cars. In 1965, they started making seat belts a required option in cars because they knew that the reason people die in car accidents is because their body is flung forward, they hit the windshield, they go through the windshield, They get a concussion, they get brain damage, they die because they're not wearing a seatbelt. We know that. It's a law to wear a seatbelt. Well, the gun leash is to the gun what the seatbelt is to a car. Imagine if around 1965, instead of making seatbelts mandatory options in cars, they said, oh, we have to do away with people's ability to drive cars because we have 40, 50,000 people a year. And keep in mind, that number is fake because these are people after seatbelts. More people died from car accidents back in the day before seatbelts. But it would be as foolish as saying we have to do away with private automobile ownership because we're losing 40 to 50,000 people a year in car accidents. Instead, we came up with putting the seatbelt in the car because we knew that if someone was in a car accident with a seatbelt on, they were less likely to be thrown from the car, thrown through the windshield, and killed. That was a simple solution, right? Imagine them saying, oh, no, you can't drive anymore because there's too many fatalities. Well, that's how we're handling gun problems today. If we know for a fact that 70% of handguns that are used by criminals are coming from lost and stolen handguns, wouldn't we just do something about reducing the number of lost and stolen handguns in America? Doesn't that sound ridiculously simple? Well, I thought it was, and that's why I created the gun leash. But I would love to hear other people's opinions. If you know that 70% of the handguns being used by criminals were previously lost or stolen from law-abiding gun owners and police officers and private security guards, wouldn't you just address reducing the number of lost and stolen handguns? Am I stupid? You tell me. Thanks.